Chapter 18. The Vampire Kingdom.
Useless.
A figure yelled and a loud slap was heard. Lisiani bit the inside of his cheek as his eyebrow twitched at the pain. The cheek that was struck was dripping blood as the figure's long, sharp nail had slashed him. Adriana, head lowered, was kneeling beside him, flinched at the sharp sound. Both of them was wrapped in bandages, and bruises was seen peeking out from their dark clothing.
I gave you a simple order, and this is what you give me, you worthless child.
The figure yelled, eyes glowing blood red. The figure took a deep breath before slicking back a few auburn strands back into place. A knock was heard behind the large door, and in came an auburn-haired male with the red eyes walked in.
Get out of my sight,
he said, and sat back on his throne and beckoned the newcomer. Lisiani nodded and backed a few steps before he turned and walked out, Adriana following silently, the newcomer's eyes trailing them sadly. Lisiani hissed when the salve was put onto the new bruise on his cheek. Then he sighed when the coolness of the salve worked its magic onto the burning bruise.
Your Highness should be more careful around the Majesty.
A black-haired vampire with amber eyes mumbled, his Asian features filled with worry as he took in Lisiani's wound. Lisiani scoffed.
I don't think I can ever be careful around Father, Ryu.
Ryu sighed as he continued putting salve on the prince's wound.
How's Mother?
Lisiani whispered. Ryu sighed again as he stood up and went to wash his hand.
The Queen remained unchanged.
Lisiani clenched his fist tightly, then sighed.
Adri.
When he got reply, he turned and saw Adriana sitting on the couch staring into space.
Adriana.
He called, and that snapped her out. She blinked a few times before turning to Lisiani. Yes?
What's bothering you, sister?
Adriana opened her mouth, most probably going to deny it, but Lisiani added.
And I'm not taking no as answer.
She closed her mouth with a huff. She proceeded to open and close her mouth multiple times before sighing. It's that youngling. There's something about him.
Who? You mean that hybrid, Joseph?
Lisiani asked. He stood up from where he sat and went to lay down on his bed.
What about him?
I don't know. Everything? She too stood up and went to lay beside her brother. The way he fought, his tone, his smirk. Lisiani sat up in a flash.
Wait, don't tell me you're in love.
He was cut off by a pillow in the face. No, you idiot. It's just... Ugh. Adriana groaned and flopped back down on the bed, hugging a pillow. Lisiani chuckled, and Yang, who just finished putting away the first aid kit, walked in with a fond look on his face.
He reminds me of her.
That halted the laughter from Lisiani.
What?
He asked, all serious now. Adriana sighed and stood up, throwing the pillow at her brother, who caught it perfectly. I don't want to think about that traitor anymore. I'm going to visit Mother. Want to join? She asked without looking back.
Don't mind if I do.
Lisiani said, following his sister with Ryu not far behind. On their way to their mother's chamber, a lady popped out of nowhere. They stopped and glared at the intruder. Ah, what do we have here? The prince and princess. An honor, she said and curtsied.
What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be with that golden beast in his hideous golden palace being his innocent loyal servant?
Lisiani asked not so politely. Adriana took a sniff at her and frowned. I guess you did with all the blood lingering on your clothes. The lady cooed. Well, unlike you two. She disappeared and appeared behind them with her arms around their shoulders. I actually get the job done, she smirked. A sharp dagger was then placed on her throat. Ah, Ryu, darling, how are you? The lady said without looking at Ryu.
I'll appreciate it if you stop harassing my prince and princess Anelia.
Anelia grinned and raised both her hands. She disappeared and appeared further behind them, walking away. I love to catch up, but I have to report to the king. Ta-ta!
Let's get going,
Lisiani said, and they continued their journey. They knocked twice before entering their mother's chamber, but their mother was not in it. Where did she go? Adriana asked, no one in particular. They walked in quietly and started inspecting the room. They found paper littering across the room with unfinished sketches of a boy. Lisiani picked one up and inspected it. The boy looked familiar. I found her, Adriana called.
Where?
Lisiani called back, putting the sketch back on the ground. The bathroom. Lysiani exchanged a glance with Ryu and they walked towards the bathroom. They saw Adriana kneeling beside a frail figure who was sketching on a piece of paper. Adriana looked up with tears in her eyes.
Mother?
Lysiani asked and went to kneel beside his mother's other side. Their mother looked up, smiling at him. Her usual dull and unfocused golden eyes were now glowing with excitement. Lysiani, my dear son, come, I have to show you something. It's about your sister, their mother said with a grin. Lysiani's face turned grim. Ryu looked at the sibling with sympathy and knelt in front of the queen and put his hand on hers.
Queen Themia. Cher is dead.
No, it's not Cher, it's the gift she has left us. A child, she yelled excitedly. The vampires in the room widened their eyes in shock. A child? What is she talking about? Their sister never married nor had any affairs, so how? I had a vision. She answered their unasked questions with a knowing grin. He's been here, the palace. He looks just like his mother, she said. Done, she exclaimed. Children, would you be so kind to get my other sketches, please? Thank you. They looked at each other and went back to the room to get the other sketches. When they finally got all the sketches, they went back to the bathroom and set all the sketches down in front of Themia. Thank you, dearies. Themia thanked and proceeded to pile all the sketches according to the tiny numbers written. When she was done, she chanted a spell and the papers went up in flames. A single folded paper remains. The walls have ears, she said, and picked up the paper. This is to prevent the king from getting hold of the child. This bathroom was charmed by me to rid off unwanted people. She opened the paper and grinned. There, my grandson. Adriana took a look at it and gasped. Curious, Lysiani took a look as well. His eyes widened at the finished drawing.
Isn't that...
A hybrid. Yes, a hybrid. Your sister met her mate when she was out on one of her adventures.
Who's the father?
Ryu asked as he looked at the picture with a curious tilt of his head, somehow attracted to the portrait of the boy. Themia smiled, tracing the portrait. The former Red Wolf King's brother, Harrison Lloyd.
Damn, those vampire packs a punch.
Joseph winced. Oh, hold still, will ya? It's hard to get you patch up if you kept squirming, Bethany mumbled.
Shouldn't someone else patch me up instead of you? Well, since you're injured too.
Joseph asked while pointing at the bandages on her body. Because, dear cousin, she said and slapped at the newly patched wound gently, receiving a small yelp from Joseph. You are a paranoid fool who only trusts me and Sebastian in this household, and Sebastian cannot treat injuries to save his own life, literally.
Hey,
Sebastian exclaimed from across the room. You know I'm right, Bethany yelled back. Sebastian proceeded to pout. She rolled her eyes, then glared down at Joseph. Plus, my injuries aren't that severe, while yours, Mr. are. No moving that arm for a few days. It was almost torn off by that rogue. Joseph sulked. Randolph walked into the guest room provided for Joseph and pecked Bethany on the cheek.
Hey, you okay?
He asked worriedly. Well, there's a bruised rib, some scratches, and a few black and blues. Excluding those, I'm fine. Nothing these new werewolf powers can't fix in a day or two. Bethany grinned.
You sure?
Yeah, 101%, Bethany said, and smiled. Then she frowned. What about the pack?
A lot injured, but no deaths.
Randolph said with a relief look. Bethany grinned and pecked Randolph's lips. Of course.
Joseph.
Sebastian was immediately beside Joseph.
Can you feel that? What?
Joseph frowned.
Love, dear cousin, love. Now our trio is down to 2.
Sebastian joked with twinkling eyes. Joseph grinned. Then, the both started to sing at the top of their lungs. But before that, someone beat them to the punch. The door slammed open and Ramona walked in. Can you feel the love tonight? Sebastian and Joseph looked at each other before they grinned and joined Ramona.
The peace the evening brings.
Bethany slapped her palm to her face, hiding her embarrassment while Randolph laughed out loud.
Oh yeah, almost forgot about this,
Sebastian said as he fished something out of his pocket. He pulled out the crest. What's that? Ramona asked, all goofiness gone as she closed the door behind her. Randolph went over to inspect it. It's a wax seal stamp with the Golden Wolf Pack's crest, Bethany said as she crossed her arms.
That Golden Wolf Pack?
Randolph asked, picking up the crest. Unfortunately, yes. We figured there's probably a mole in that pack, Bethany replied. Okay, back up, Ramona said. If there is a mole in the pack, how are we getting in to find that bastard and catch him? she asked. Bethany and Sebastian looked at each other and grinned. Randolph and Ramona turned to Joseph for explanation. Joseph shrugged, looking as clueless as they are. If I remember correctly, the Golden Wolf King invited us to his ball once, Bethany said.
And looky here, according to the calendar. Where? It's tomorrow night.
Sebastian grinned. The remaining werewolf and hybrid looked impressed. Okay, that settles that, but to find that mole we need a plan. Anyone have a plan? Ramona asked. No? Well, guess we are not getting any sleep tonight. While planning, Randolph and Ramona decided to not go to the ball with them. Instead, they decided to help the pack rebuild from their recent attack, and will try to find more clues in the mess. But they help with the planning anyways. The more ideas, the better. The following morning, they went to the Red Wolf Pack to meet King Grayson and tell him about their new findings.
So you're telling me that there's a spy or something working for the vampire inside the ranks of the Golden Wolf Pack? And the vampire are experimenting our species along with theirs to make fail hybrids babies and planning to end us with them?
Grayson asked, exasperated.
When you say it like that, it does sound unbelievable.
Sebastian said, and Grayson gives him a, you think, look.
Do you give me a reason to believe you?
Grayson said. Bethany pulled out the wax seal stamp. Grayson's eyebrows shot up.
And where did you get this?
Then they proceed to explain about the recent attack, and this is what the enemy dropped. After finished listening to their explanation, Grayson sighed and rubbed his forehead.
I guess no deaths then.
Grayson asked, looking up at them. They shook their head. Other than a few injured, no deaths. He sighed.
So our uncle, who was captured by the vampires, have a vampire mate and gave birth to Joseph, our hybrid cousin.
Bethany and Sebastian looked at each other before looking back at their big brother innocently and nodded. Grayson sighed again. Now, Bethany and Sebastian are on their way to the ball in a limo that King Grayson sent with a message that he will find out more about the experiments personally, and will tell them if he find anything.
Tell me again, why am I staying back?
Joseph pouted. 'Cause, one, we need someone to hack into the palace's system and navigate us through the gigantic palace. She tapped at her hidden earpiece. You are the best hacker we have. Second, she slapped his arm and that made Joseph wince. You're injured. After an hour or more, they finally reached the Golden Wolf Pack's private parking lot. Then they follow a maid to the main ballroom. She asked them to wait while she went to inform the king.
Ready?
Sebastian asked. As I'll ever be, Bethany said and grinned.
You look lovely,
Sebastian said with a cheeky grin. She looked down at her red and silver gown, then at his red suit and pants with the silver dress shirt and tie, and smirked. That's rich coming from a dashing man. In a faint voice, they heard someone announced.
Now welcome, the long-lost siblings of the Red Wolf King, Princess Bethany and Prince Sebastian of the Red Wolf Pack. May the force be with you, sister,
Sebastian said with a grin. He raised his elbow. Bethany gave a surprised laugh. She linked her arm with his. May the force be with you, brother. And the door opened. Let the show begin.